Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life Made Easier. My name is Dr. Tiffany Hunter, and I'm an energy healer in the United States. This is a podcast about energy, emotion, and awareness and how it all shapes the way that we live. Each week we talk about energy and healing, and we try to explore them in ways that can help you improve your relationships, decrease your stress, make better decisions, because when you can figure out all of that and you put the energy piece in, everything gets easier and things become more manageable.
And hello, I'm Dr. Karen Janes, a psychologist and energy healer in the UK. Every so often, we have been taking a pause in our usual podcast format and answering some questions from our wonderful producer, Carol, who usually hides behind the scenes. So if you have any burning questions you'd like us to answer, please send them into Carol and she'll make sure we get to them. So this is the second episode, I think, of the questions from Carol, and we really hope you enjoy it and find it useful.
Yes, and keep sending them in. They're super fun to find. So, Karen, I have a question here from Carol. She would like me to ask you, what is an aura?
Ooh, big question. Well, maybe. Is that a big question? I don't know. So the
big question, big aura, big aura, big question.
Does my aura look big in this? So the simplest way I think over the years I have found to explain what an aura is to people is to think of it like serving the same kind of function for our energy system as our skin does for our physical body. So our skin is the outside edge of our physical body, and it's semi-permeable. And what we mean by that is it's kind of made to let certain things in and certain things out, but not other things. So we know that we can absorb certain things through our skin and other things don't pass through the barrier of our skin. And on the whole, our skin, if it is reasonably healthy, does a really good job of filtering the stuff we want in and the stuff we want to be released out, like sweat or toxins, and not doing the good stuff, not doing the bad stuff. And our aura works in very much the same way. So our aura extends beyond our physical body. So if you've ever had that feeling of like when someone's standing a bit too close to you, they're not physically touching you and you kind of want to just step away, or maybe they feel really nice and you want to kind of lean in. That's often when your two auras are kind of beginning to touch, beginning to come into contact. And that's the edge of us in the world, if you like, where we end and where the world around us begins. So our aura, much like our skin, if it's reasonably well, healthy, taken care of, it can filter what we might want to release out. It keeps our energy in. We are able to release out energy we don't need, particularly like maybe emotional energy or just stuff, debris we've picked up from our environment that isn't useful to us. And it can allow us to take energy and information in through it. And our aura, we can also think of it as being a sense organ. So again, that you may be familiar with having had a sensation almost like a prickling on the back of your neck, and you turn around and someone's looking at you and you didn't hear anything. There was just a kind of a pressure, a sensation. And that's where your aura is picking up someone else's kind of attention or energy on you. So our aura is really, really important to so much that we talk about in our podcast, because it's how we receive energy information from the world around us and how we make sense of that. That's my summary. What have I forgotten? What have I forgotten, Tiffany? What have I not?
I was very impressed. That didn't feel like a summary to me. That felt like a pretty comprehensive answer to that. I think you covered all the bases. I can't think of a single thing to add.
I've been doing this a while.
As you have.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's something that we often end up needing. There's value in explaining a bit about it to our clients. And I mean, when we both started doing this kind of work, talking about auras was not nearly as commonplace as it is now. I mean, I think most people have at least heard the term and have some sense that perhaps it's a real thing. And, it might be in more scientific circles, it might be, talked about more as an energy field or a biofield or something along those lines. But the idea being that every living thing has a kind of energy to it, that is a bit different to just the purely physical energy that makes us or another living thing up. And that includes animals, birds, fish, etc., but also growing things. And in fact, even the earth itself has an energy field around it.
Yes, although there is a difference between having an energy field and an aura.
Okay, yes. Do you want to explain that? Please explain that.
I think of an aura as an organ of the body.
Right, yeah.
Right, and as an organ, it has a purpose and it has a function, and it needs to be repaired occasionally, and it certainly needs to be maintained. Whereas an energy field is not an organ; it's not an interactive thing.
So, do you think
so like a tree has an organ, has a aura? Like living things have auras.
Right. Yes. So you could say like, I don't know, a piece of furniture has an energy field, but doesn't have an aura.
Right.
Yeah, because it's made up of energy. Yeah.
So do you think this sentence works? A forest has an energy field that is in part made up of the different auras of the plants and animals inside of it?
Ooh. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah.
I think that works too.
Yeah. And the other thing, as we're talking, that really strikes me about why this is a useful thing to know about is that it's often looking after our aura, particularly, is something which we can add to our self-care repertoire, if you like. And it's not something we teach. It's not something we learn about. So most of us, when we're growing up, get taught about the importance of brushing our teeth and washing our faces and taking a shower reasonably regularly and all of those things. And even to a degree, about food and exercise and all of that kind of stuff. And if we're lucky, we may also get some information and help with learning about looking after our emotional well-being. But it's very, very rare, I think, for young people to be taught anything about looking after their energy system. And particularly the aura is something that, if we know how to look after it, we can add in some quite simple things to do that are easily done regularly at home. They don't need any special skills or equipment or money, most importantly, or anybody else to help us with once we've learned how to do it. And we do have an episode, I think, about the aura with some information in there about looking after it. So do check that out if you'd like some more information.
Yes. So here's the thing. I have a question for you. A follow-up. Here's a follow-up question for you.
Are you allowed?
You didn't mention anything about colors.
Oh yeah. So yes, and the whole aura photography thing as well is often based around seeing colors in the aura. So I think the reason I didn't mention it is because I don't actually find it that useful. Which
I think that's the answer.
Yeah, which, may be in part just how my particular brain works. And it may be that for some people, it is a really useful way of thinking about the world or understanding something. For example, I know somebody who sees emotions as color. Like each emotion has a very distinct color, and she can kind of tell something about how she's feeling or how others are feeling based on the color. I don't even really know how it comes to her, whether it's a color she has in her mind or, and some people see, numbers in different ways. And so how our brains work is very different. So it may well be that there are people for whom seeing colors in auras or sensing colors in auras is an important part of how they understand their own or someone else's aura. But for me, I guess a color is a vibration that we have learned to label as this vibration is orange or red or whatever. But it also, I think the energy of our aura is constantly kind of moving and changing. And my sense about aura photography, for example, is even the act of, you know how everybody, when you take a photo, lots of people will be like instantly they don't look relaxed and they're all kind of pulling funny faces because the
Oh, yes,
camera's,
that would be me.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's many people. And the same thing I think happens with I would imagine happens with an aura camera.
Yeah.
It gets pointed at you and then your aura is instantly different because someone's pointing a camera at you. So arguably how much it tells you about how the health of your aura, I think, is probably questionable. I mean, not to say it's not a fun thing to do, or that it's never gives any useful or accurate information, but I think for me there are better ways, and ways that just work better with my brain, about sensing, using my aura. I mean, it's a lot of how I work as a healer, using my aura as a sense organ to feel stuff about other people's auras and energy systems.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Tiffany. What does grounded mean? What does it mean to be grounded?
Wow, there is a term that people are so familiar with because no matter what walk of life you are, you've probably used it or thought about it. And if you ask people what they mean by that, it's often hard to, it's like love or art, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know, I can't define it, but I know what it is when I see
Mm-hmm.
it, kind of thing. So from a mental point of view, when we're grounded, our thoughts don't race, but we
Mm-hmm.
can actually have them. So we're not shut down, but we're also not racing. And we are able to make decisions from a balanced place. From a physical point of view, our body feels relaxed. There's no point of anxiety anywhere or overstimulation. And from an energetic point of view, a part of our energy has completely connected to us and our bodies in our entirety, not just to the upper chakras or the upper mind, but our energetic system in its entirety, as well as to molded or melded or flowing with, however you want to think about it, with the ground underneath us.
Hmm. So I have
Oh,
a
you sound surprised by that. I'm so curious how you would answer it.
no. I just think I think it's a great explanation. But I was thinking I have a follow-up question. Can you be
Ooh,
too grounded or overgrounded?
yes, you absolutely can. Especially if earth is not your main element. It is very possible to be overly grounded.
Yeah.
I think people think of it only as not grounded enough, but it is
Hmm.
absolutely possible to be too grounded.
Yeah, and also what's the right amount of groundedness for each person is different. Like some
Yes.
people really need to be more anchored, and other people would find that very uncomfortable and hard to function. Um,
Hmm.
but I also makes me think like of things like anxiety and depression. Depression now, I mean, questionable whether it's cause or effect, but depression in people who are really depressed, they may be almost too grounded. People who are anxious
Yeah.
are likely to be not grounded enough because everything's all up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think sometimes it might be a symptom rather than a cause. Um, but
Yes.
but still, good to kind of understand a little about that.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's important what you said about how different people do better at different grounding levels. I
Hmm.
think one person can feel differently about being grounded on Tuesday than they do on Wednesday. And absolutely different than how they feel about being grounded in New York City versus being grounded in the Sonoma Desert. It changes all the time. It's not supposed to be static.
And also what you're doing. I think there are some
Hmm.
activities that it's really good to be more grounded. You know, I mean, when we're doing healing
Hmm.
work with people, we really need to be really grounded. Um,
Yes.
but if you're kind of having a frivolous, fun time, you know, in a safe, lovely place with your best friend, you know, you don't need to be super grounded.
Hmm.
In fact, you might not want to be. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and that's allowing it to be kind of fluid. And I think with practice, this, because this is something we also have another episode about, if you're interested in learning more about it, and allowing yourself as you learn about it, and what does it feel like for you and what feels good for you, and allowing it to be fluid and flexible to a degree.
Hmm. So when you see clients, do you ground them on the table or do you ground them when they're standing before you say goodbye?
Usually when they're standing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it harder to ground clients when they're horizontal.
Yeah, I think there's something about the main energy lines being vertical and connecting down that helps with that. And also, I
Hmm.
feel like when someone's laying on the couch, in a way, we don't necessarily want them to be too ground. We need to be the
Hmm.
grounding force. They don't necessarily
Yeah.
need to be. Um,
Yeah.
and then just standing up and starting to prepare to leave shifts. So, which is partly
Hmm.
why I think both of us probably, again, one of those things we've never talked that much about, but why, when someone then gets up off the couch, we'll just check their shoulders
Yes.
and that's a
Yeah.
healing technique which we have learned to do just to make sure people are grounded enough to leave the room and go drive home or, interact with their
Yeah.
children or whatever.
Back in the day when people wrote me checks,
Hmm.
my process was that they'd get off the table, they'd sit down, I'd hand them some water, we'd chit chat for a little bit, they'd write me a check, I'd ground them, they'd leave. Which meant that they would try to write, and I can't tell you, it was a weekly occurrence that somebody would have their pen in their hand and go to write something and just stop and just be like, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do here.
Yeah.
Oh, so funny, but yeah, people don't do checks anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It dates me.
Yeah.
Okay, my dear. The next question is, do you see dead people? Do you see dead people?
I see dead people. For those who don't know the reference, is it Fifth Element, the film? Fifth Element? No.
Oh my gosh, I have clearly
No, it's
disappointed you. I have failed you in my movie education.
that's the wrong film. Is that the wrong film?
It's really the wrong film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's the film? Tell me what the film is.
I don't remember God, what is the title of the film? But the Fifth
Bruce
Element
Willis.
is Fifth Element is a cultural icon. You can't be dissing Fifth Element. We have to sit and watch it together.
No, I've seen
What
it.
is the
I've
film?
seen
It's
it. I like
Bruce, yeah, Bruce Willis and as the doctor. Anyway,
they're both Bruce
you know
Willis.
what?
Is that my confusion?
That is your
Yes.
confusion.
Yes.
That
Okay.
is your
Anyway, we
confusion.
can't remember the name of the film, but there's a film where yeah. Can I see dead people? No, no, probably not. I think is my short answer. Generally,
I'm going to interrupt you, and I'm just going to be that person and interrupt you because I'm sitting at a computer. I can Google it. It's this Sixth Sense.
that's the
Is the
one.
movie.
Yes. Yes.
Ugh, okay,
So
we can all relax now. I feel like I can breathe again.
get the itch
Okay,
out
I'm
your
sorry.
brain.
So no, you're not seeing dead people.
Not generally. So, I mean, aside from like, we could also have a whole topic about are there dead people to see?
We could.
Yeah, I think, but I think really we put this in as a bit of fun, but as we kind of allowed this question in because we've sort of been taking questions and seeing which ones might be fun to answer with Carol's steady guidance. So we don't get too out of control. So I think this speaks to a kind of broader question of, do we see energy? Do we, because if if a dead person, however we interpret this, is as an energy form that's still somehow surviving beyond the physical death. I don't really see energy with my eyes usually. There have been occasions where I've kind of seen something which I think was a sort of an energetic something. But in a way, going back to the very first question about auras, I mean, the way I perceive energy tends to be more of a felt sense through my aura, which sometimes translates into an image in my head, quite often does actually, but it isn't really. So like, with the colors in the aura, I don't really see them. So I don't think I've ever actually seen a ghost walking around. Are there energies around which I think are there and have perceived at times? I would say yes, but have I physically seen them with my physical eyes? On the whole, not. How about you?
It's a great source of envy, jealousy, and disappointment for me that the way it works in the movies is not how it works in real life.
Yeah.
I really want it to. I really wanted to. Although I think for some people, at least snippets of it absolutely are. I say my communication is much more like yours. It's
Yeah.
a presence. It's a knowing. It's visceral. It's body and kinetic oriented, which is how I tend. I have had to learn with clients to see things, but even then, I'm not seeing it as you say with my eyes. If people imagine what their front door looks like, you've got an image in your head that now we can have a conversation about. And that's how I've learned to see things, because sometimes clients are much more visual than I am. We have to have a shared reality. So I've learned to do it. It's not natural to me. It's usually an image in my head, not superimposed in front of me. Not something I'm looking at superimposed, but something in my head that I know what it looks like.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's something I've also got better at. Didn't used to be able to do that as clearly as I often can now. Yeah, but it's interesting because sometimes clients will say, "Oh, I can see somebody here," or they can see colors or what have you, and I guess often we don't have a conversation about exactly how they're perceiving that and whether they can literally see a figure in the room like they could see me. But I suspect probably for the most part not. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't work like it does in the movies, which a great
Yeah.
source of
And
disappointment.
sometimes we have to manage, I think, our clients' disappointment about that too, because they're kind of, like a lot about energy work, energy healing, building our energy intelligence and energy awareness is quite subtle. Like it isn't some exploding fireworks and oh my goodness, this vision apparition appeared to me, and so which is partly why we can easily miss it and why we often aren't aware of how much we are perceiving about the energy around us, because in a way it's kind of much more mundane and not particularly exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a number of people talk to me about whether or not, I think auras come into this category too. Do you see auras? And there's this hope that we're going to train ourselves to see auras, and then we're going to walk around the world and everybody's going to be in these little pretty undulating light bubbles. I have people that have told me that's how they see the world. Not very often.
Yeah.
I certainly don't.
Yeah.
I'd love to, but
It would be very
but I
cool.
don't. It would be very cool. Yeah,
Probably
it would be
not
very
without
cool,
the use
but
of
I don't.
certain substances.
Yes.
Okay, so next question for you, Tiffany. What is energy anatomy?
Oh, that's a good one. That's easy. I can do that one. So our bodies are made up of physical anatomy, mental field, and energetic anatomy. And energy anatomy is the equivalent of the physical anatomy in that it's made up of systems and organs, and they interact with each other. They have an effect on the body. They have an ideal state and they have a compromised state, and they need to be taken care of and monitored and occasionally healed, just like our physical anatomy. So the aura being the obvious example that we've already talked about. It's an organ in the energy anatomy with a job to do. And as Karen so eloquently said, its job is to filter the energy of the world around us so it doesn't all come bombarding us, which is why people who are overly sensitive is often because their aura, their energy organ, is not functioning well. And yeah, full stop. That's what energy anatomy is.
Yeah, and I wonder if, are there maybe a couple of other parts of the energy anatomy you could name just to give people a little bit more?
Yeah, the ones that most people have heard of are going to be the aura, the chakras, the meridian lines, and the astral body.
Yeah,
those are kind of the four ones that are super understood and common by most people.
Yeah, and I think probably much like the physical body used to be, we're still very much at a stage of developing our vocabulary for that, and a shared sort of a definition in what I'm feeling there is a meridian line, or is a chakra, or is a psychic energy line, or a whatever. And I think we're still very much at the beginning of really being able to have a sort of shared vocabulary for all the parts of our energy anatomy.
It's interesting to say that. I feel like if you put even my more kind of beginner students in front of a body and said, is this a meridian line or a chakra or an aura or the astral body, they could pretty easily tell you. But I think if I said, is this the third layer of the aura or the sixth layer of the aura, now we're into blurry territory, right?
Yeah,
or
and also,
where does this chakra end exactly?
yeah, and maybe because we're quite used to defining things in very physical sort of 3D space, and I think that is a little bit harder to do in terms of our energy system, maybe. But also I feel like once you get past those four, then
Right.
there's more that we like
It
probably
definitely gets,
we
yeah,
don't even have names for, or we have
yeah.
silly names for because there isn't a proper name, if you like.
No, I think you're right. Past those four, we have names and awarenesses, but now I'm not sure that I could, those four, I could walk into it. We could both walk into a healer anywhere in the world and we can have a conversation. But after the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 20th,
Yeah.
you and I have an understanding, but we come from the same tradition of learning. So now yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Okay. Tell me, Karen, how do I know if my chakras are blocked?
What an excellent question. And first, I think this is really interesting because this is something which I don't know about you, but it's not that unusual for me to have clients who come to me and say, I think this or that chakra is blocked, or somebody told me this or that chakra is blocked. That's quite common, and sometimes that somebody might be like a medium or a somebody they had some kind of reading with, psychic reading or something, and they come saying, I think my throat chakra is blocked or my root chakra is blocked. So just very, very quickly, in case anybody listening to this isn't sure, the chakras are energy centers around the body, and there are generally 7 main ones, which most people talk about and agree on, and then there are many more that as energy healers we might work with. And in a way, I'm not sure it's always that helpful to over focus on, is my chakra blocked? Because I think a blocked chakra is often more of a symptom than the cause of something. Often, not always, but so I think there are some that we might be more used to being aware of. So for example, if you I think the throat is a common one that people do have some awareness of. So feeling a lump in your throat, feeling like it's hard to speak or express yourself, feeling tightness in your throat area, or even possibly having a lot of throat infections, or that could be a physical symptom. So in general, I guess tightness, tension, I mean often just a feeling of something's a bit blocked up can indicate a chakra blockage, if you like. And it can be quite hard to really distinguish, is that my chakra that's blocked, or is it a physical sensation, or are the two kind of intertwined anyway? Because if you've listened to any of our other podcast episodes, you'll be very familiar with us talking about us being, roughly speaking, made up of 3 parts: a mind, a physical body, and an energy system. But those 3 parts of us really are kind of somewhat they're sort of slightly artificial divisions, because all the parts of us are so interconnected anyway. So I think I think there isn't necessarily a very clear, obvious way to to really sort of define, that's definitely my chakra that's blocked. And it may be that you you need to kind of get some help with that. There are often sort of meditations you can do which can help. Various methods of healing can help. And also the again, I don't know if you would agree with this about chakras, but I think they're also things that if we can sort out other problems, oftenly will just naturally rebalance themselves. So some of why our throat chakras tend to get blocked is if we're holding down emotions, suppressing emotions, not saying things that we really would like to be able to say. And often once we start allowing those emotions to be expressed, our throat chakra then is fine. It's good with that, and it doesn't necessarily need any more help. Sometimes it might, but yeah. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. I also have people coming in with the same thing. And I think most people think that the blocked chakra, as you say, is causing the problem rather than the problem is causing the chakra. I don't know if this is a bit gross, but it makes me think of like oily pores create blocked pores. Not that, I don't know. We're gonna have call from estheticians going, that's not true. That's not. But an example I'm thinking of is if someone, and I think it's because there's a lot of information out in the world identifying a chakra with a behavior or a mental state. So people will come in and they'll say, well, I have trouble speaking my mind, therefore my throat must be clogged. My throat chakra must be blocked. Or I have trouble with will, therefore the sacral chakra must be blocked, right? And so they're coming in to get unblocked without realizing that we need to deal with what's causing their struggles with communication or with consistency in their life. And then once that happens, like you said, the chakra will unblock.
Yeah, it makes me
think... If you're just unblocking the chakra itself without doing the other work, you're just treating the symptom. It's just going to get reclogged again.
Yeah, it makes me think of like people who go to the osteopath or the chiropractor who have like a really terrible position they sit in at their desk. And they say, can you sort my neck or my back out or whatever? And then they don't change anything about how they sit. So they have to keep going back for the adjustments and the work on their body to help them come back into kind of better alignment. But the thing that's causing the problem is not being addressed. And I think our chakras are very much like that, so just coming and focusing on the chakra, I need to unblock my chakra, is often isn't really that helpful usually. And maybe,
but I think sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe the other thing to add here is there's also other things about chakras that can go wrong that isn't just about them getting blocked. And again, some of those will naturally right themselves if you can address the underlying cause. And some of them you may need a bit of help with, and sometimes environment plays a part as well, or like drinking alcohol will have an effect on some of your chakras, but probably temporary. If you then if you drink too much one night and then have a few nights where you don't drink any alcohol, it will just naturally come back into balance for most people. But different things we do will impact the balance and the blockedness of our individual chakras.
Yeah. Well done, us. Those were fun, guys. Thank you. Those are fun questions.
Yeah, and we really do. We love getting your questions. So, comment on social media posts or email them into us, or send them however is easiest for you. And we'll add them to our increasing list of
we'll add them to Carol's increasing list.
Carol will add them to the list and tell us which burning ones there are that she would like us to answer next time.
Carol, the keeper of all lists.
What would we do without her?
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye. See you next time.